James McManus has faced some big challenges in the NRL, passing most with flying colours. Becoming a parent was a very different and difficult matter. McManus and his wife Isha have been trying for a baby since 2009. Their daughter Emmeline arrived 10 weeks ago.
We did IVF last year. We had to do 3 cycles to get her, and we had a miscarriage in there, but it was good. We learnt a lot and about each other, and it was really tough. All the hormones, and poor James probably went through some really torturous times, all my different moods, but yeah, it was definitely worth it without a doubt.
You feel quite lonely sort of sometimes when you're going through that. You don't really want to talk about it much, and all your friends and relatives around you are getting pregnant, and that sort of makes it a bit harder. But we finally got there, and she's worth every bit.
The Wingers' next major hurdle: sleep deprivation.
Try and rock up to training on a Tuesday morning for fitness in a chirpy mood, and you can see why it's a form of torture. Tough nights and tough days of training, and then you come home and she gives you a little smile, and it makes it all sort of worth it.
McManus admits injuries plagued his 2014 campaign, but he's now already enjoying his best pre-season ever.
Wanted to play a couple of kilos heavier and just be sharper across the ground and have a bit more punch when I hit the line, and I've certainly been able to create that in the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks of training.
The emergence of the Matautia brothers is certain to add pressure for spots, but McManus believes it's a sign the club is headed in the right direction. He says the return of Rick Stone has also created a healthier team environment compared to the previous regime.
They can cast a shadow sometimes and can make it hard for some players to express themselves. And under Stoney, I think there'll be a lot of young local guys will probably get more of a shot as well.
Alrighty, so in here, Santa's come a little bit early for us. We've got 3 baby meerkats.
At just 100 grams, they're tiny showstoppers, the first meerkats to be born at Hunter Valley Zoo near Cessnock.
So at this age, when they're first born, they're born with their eyes shut, just like a puppy is. So over the last 2 weeks, they've grown fur, they've grown teeth, and their eyes have opened. So very, very exciting for us to watch.
The trio spent just 7 weeks in Mum's tummy before being born and settling into their new home nicely. Like most babies, they spend a lot of time sleeping, but they've also made a few trips outside.
When they first enter the world, they're going to have a babysitter with them at all times.
Yeah.
So Mum is always the dominant female, but the entire group helps her look after the kids.
Yeah.
So she gets lots of babysitters.
The pups will make their first public appearance in the enclosure in about 7 days, and while they're only tiny, they're expected to draw a big crowd. And they're expected to cope with summer in the valley just fine.
In the wild, they're native to the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, so they're quite used to our hot days.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It's 8:05am and solicitor Kim Cross starts her commute, a train trip from Metford to Newcastle, faster than driving during peak periods. A Save Our Rail member, she's been catching the train into the CBD for 30 years. She says it's highly predictable and argued the government's interim bus service and light rail would have been the opposite, pushing commuters into their cars and creating more congestion. At 8:35 on the dot, she arrives at Newcastle Station.
Being able to know when the train arrives, know when the train will drop you off, and a 30-minute journey to work is excellent.
Debate over the rail line has raged for close to 3 decades. It's been a long battle for Save Our Rail. Joan Dawson has led the charge for 11 years.
It's a sense of injustice to the community and to the people who need the rail services. My initial involvement was on behalf of people who are disabled and find difficulty in travelling in buses.
She always had concerns it was a land grab by the government. The Premier's recent comments about development along the rail corridor didn't help.
I don't want to limit the plans and the ideas and the opportunities that come forward. I want to see all of them.
The Premier himself, Mr Baird, has confirmed that indeed there will be development on the corridor.
To allay fears, the Premier dubbed it the People's Project, giving Council the final say over the corridor. But some argued he was washing his hands of responsibility and that Council wouldn't have the real power to decide.
That's simply a furphy. Council can only determine developments that are less than $20 million or if they're Crown developments under $5 million.
The Business Chamber and many Hunter Street businesses have long supported the truncation, but a survey conducted by retailer Bobby Antonick around the mall showed a different result.
29 businesses were surveyed and 25 of the businesses supported maintaining the line in Newcastle. You know, they had concerns that they would detour the CBD and go to the shopping centres.
Opponents also label the truncation and light rail a waste of money.
The plan for light rail should be an expansion of the current service. Nowhere in the world are people cutting back vital public transport infrastructure.
Take your time. It doesn't take that much longer just to stick at the speed limit and you'll get there safely and your loved ones will be waiting for you when you get there.
The Samaritans realise that Christmas can be a very stressful and difficult time for a number of people, and we are very committed to ensuring that everybody feels a part of a community.
One look at the crowds and you could tell 'twas the night or day before Christmas. Charlestown Square was buzzing as shoppers sought out last-minute items.
We're really seeing people keen to get out into the shops in the last hours they have available to get out and pick up something important for Christmas.
Thousands flooded shops, but for some, the going got a little tough.
They all want the latest items, which have been really hard to find. So,
what's your Christmas present?
I don't really want anything for Christmas.
Really?
I only really want money.
It was a similar story at Westville Katara. Thankfully, Santa was still on hand for those last-minute requests.
Well, it wouldn't be Christmas shopping without visiting the big man himself, Santa. Big night ahead?
Oh, we've got a big night tonight, and I'm excited to be delivering to boys and girls presents all over the world.
What's been the on the hit list for most boys and girls? What's been the most asked for?
Well, for the girls, it's Frozen like Elsa, Anna, and Olive. And for the boys, it's mainly, I've got mobile phones, iPads, maybe dragons.
Retailers are also gearing up for the post-Christmas sales, which start on Saturday in the Hunter.
Some pretty significant crowds. That is single-handedly the busiest day of the year. So we're geared up for a big one.
Michael Kane, NBN News. For many people, the festive season isn't so festive.
Financial wise, Christmas present wise, it's a very tough time at this time of year.
Hunter Valley Men's Crisis Support is a charity that helps single men experiencing temporary homelessness, and this year has been its busiest yet.
To be able to help them when they really need someone to show that they're important, to let them know that they're cared for, let them know that they're provided for in the community, and we think we're making a real difference.
The organisation provides accommodation like this.
Just enough time to get them to be able to get themselves back on their feet, save their bond and lift themselves up after the difficulties that they've had.
It's helped many who were close to breaking point, like Luke Moran.
It's taken its toll. There's been quite some depressing times in the last 6 months, going through courts, trying to gain more access for my child.
Lifeline is also gearing up for a busy time of year.
Over Christmas, we will enter 18,000 calls to the crisis support line. Not getting to see children and grandchildren on Christmas Day is a really big issue for people.
Michael Kane, NBN News. For an Adelaide boy, last week's win over the Reds was the sweetest of all.
It was pretty special. So I've been waiting a while for that one, and coming against my former club, Adelaide United, couldn't have been any better. So I think there's a bit of extra excitement going into that game.
It's been a sudden rise for Alan Welsh, who only 3 months ago trialled with the club in the hope of winning a youth team contract. Missing out would have meant starting all over again.
I would have been back home at my local club, Croydon Kings, probably still working at the pub.
But in the club's round 4 clash with Perth, Phil Stubbins decided to put all his faith in the 20-year-old. Last weekend, his 6'4" frame filled in at the back, a position he feels more accustomed to.
Midfield was a bit tougher because I hadn't played there for a while, and the speed and having players come behind you, having to turn and stuff, it's a lot harder and a lot sharper. So at the back, you've got the whole game in front of you.
The next challenge for Welsh is this Saturday and keeping Melbourne Victory's potent strike force quiet.
Yeah, it doesn't go into Melbourne in front of their home fans, so it's probably going to be the biggest game I've played in. Someone like Thompson or Barbarousis, if you don't get there on time or they nip past you, they're gone.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
He's enjoyed plenty of success over the years, But 2014 will go down as the most significant in Jason Doyle's career.
It's taken me a fair few years to get to the top in riding in Grand Prix, so finally got the opportunity.
Having ridden for various teams in the UK and Poland, Doyle is now looking for a helping hand to run his own operation.
At the moment, it's going to be summing up about 150 grand to ride the Grand Prix. We've have to run 7 bikes in Europe and vans and mechanics. It's a massive outlay, but I'm really looking forward to it.
But first, he'll take a shot at the Australian title. His campaign begins at Kurri Kurri on Boxing Day, where he'll take on the country's best riders at the Jason Crump Invitational. The 29-year-old will be up against the likes of 2012 world champion Chris Holder, as well as the next generation.
All these young kids while we're in Europe are riding a lot more than we did back in the day, and I think it's going to really show when they come to the Australian titles.
While some woke up with the sunrise, others needed a little more encouragement. Oscar and Charlie McDonald, lucky enough to make it onto Santa's nice list, alongside their furry friend. Not forgetting the religious meaning of Christmas, hundreds attended church services across the region. Young and old, the faithful filled Newcastle's Sacred Heart Cathedral. An army of volunteers served up more than a tonne of food at the annual Samaritans Christmas lunch at the city's foreshore, helping those who need it most.
It brings us together as one community, people from all sorts of backgrounds.
In its 13th year, more than 700 people filled the rail shed to share the Christmas spirit. And judging by the turnout, its popularity isn't waning.
The atmosphere, I mean, it's just beautiful.
Oh, absolutely brilliant.
The Lord Mayor also joined the festivities, reflecting on the year that was.
It's a heartfelt thank you from Newcastle City Council really to the Samaritans, and a big Merry Christmas to everybody here on the foreshore today.
A game of cricket in the park and a giant slide kept the kids busy, but the words on everyone's lips.
Merry Christmas, Australia.
Lauren Kelly, NBN News.
G'day, I'm Petty Officer Medic David Young from HMA Success, on my way to the Middle Eastern region for the next 6 months. Just want to send out a big Merry Christmas to my 2 boys, Edison and Kelvin, and to my wife, Melissa. Love the 3 of yous, missing yous, and looking forward to seeing yous when I get home next year. Bye.
Hi, I'm Flight Lieutenant Steph Lampkin. I'm the officer in charge of the airload team here in the Middle East region. I'd just like to wish all my beautiful family and friends from back home in Australia a very merry and safe Christmas. And a special shout out to my partner Timothy and my mum and dad from Singleton in New South Wales, and my brother Benjamin. A very safe and Merry Christmas. I love you all, I miss you, and I'll see you very soon.
Hi, I'm Craftsman William Bradstreet. I'm a mechanic at Camp Karga, Afghanistan. I'd like to wish my family and friends a Merry Christmas. A special Merry Christmas to my fiance Sam, my mum, dad, Lee and Steve, and my 2 brothers Clayton and Andy.
Hi, my name's Dana Davis. I'm deployed to the Middle East region, and I would like to say Merry Christmas to Mum, Auntie Ree and Uncle Lefty. I miss you all. And David, I love you and thank you for your support. Merry Christmas.
Hi,
It's Peter Archer here. I'd like to say hi and Merry Christmas to my family, Jemima, Joshua, Matthew, to my folks, John and Vicky Archer. Wish you the very best on Christmas Day. Take care and I'll see you soon.
G'day Australia. I'm Corporal Kira Poole, currently serving in the Middle East region as an air load team. I'd like to wish my hubby and my two boys, Riley and Ari, back in Newcastle, a very Merry Christmas. Mummy loves you.
Newcastle train station, a very different scene. For the first time in more than 150 years, no trains arrived or left the terminal. A Supreme Court ruling last week has halted the physical removal of the train tracks, due to start today, but it hasn't slowed the state government's plans to get on with the job. It's moving ahead with its controversial plan it says will revitalise the city, saying today marks a new era, with train services no longer dividing the city. The last train left the platform late last night, prompting calls for Transport Minister Gladys Berejiklian to resign. Member for Newcastle Tim Krakenthorpe has labelled the process a disgrace, saying there's been a rush to cut the line and with little justification. But today it appeared to be business as usual. As planned, a temporary interchange was established at Broadmeadow Station. Commuters bussed from there into Newcastle.
We've got street teams at the stations of Civic Wickham and Newcastle. Lots of information online, transportnewsouthwales.info. So we're very present and helping people out, and so far things are running really smoothly.
Some commuters weren't bothered by the changes.
I'm hopping off at Broadmeadow, here's my bus, on I go.
But others found the process frustrating.
Previously, if I was catching the train into Newcastle, I would have already been there. And instead, 20 minutes later, I'm still here waiting for a bus.
John Rademacher takes his bike into the city weekly, but was unable to travel with it on the bus.
The announcement on the station at Thornton said buses will replace trains. Now, if you're replacing a service, that should be identical, not an inferior service.
New South Wales Trainlink says it's confident bus services will meet demand once the holiday period ends.
Right now it's obviously the holiday season, and as people come back to work, we'll make sure we've got enough buses to meet every train, and many times that will be much more than one bus. So we'll be monitoring that, and we're set up for exactly that.
Meanwhile, work also progressed on removing infrastructure at the Merriweather Street and Stewart Avenue boom gates, as well as track work at Hamilton Station, which will be the end of the line from January 5. Railcorp is lodging an appeal to the court's decision. Renee Feder, NBN News.
A wet Christmas night, creating a sombre mood at Newcastle Station. These are its last hours as a functioning passenger hub. For those opposed to the line's truncation, it had come down to this after decades of debate. Around 20 Save Our Rail supporters sacrificed their Christmas to object and ride the rails one last time.
I think it's absolutely disgusting that they've chosen Christmas night.
Things didn't go smoothly earlier in the night. Passengers were shunted onto buses after one train broke down. Brothers Matt and Tom Newman were on a far different platform, outnumbered but advocating the line's removal.
Could not think of a better way to spend my Christmas night than coming down here and showing what democracy is all about, arguing for the best case for Newcastle, and coming down with my brother. Great.
Still buoyed after this week's win in the Supreme Court, Save Our Rail says the battle's not over yet.
We've won the battle to keep the tracks. Now we've got to get the trains back on them again.
Long-time train driver Mark Woolhams had the honour of driving one of the last passenger services out of town, the 1124 to Talara.
My grandfather was a steam engine driver at Everleigh before World War II, so we've got a long history of working on the railway, yeah.
At 11:27, the last train pulled out of Newcastle Station, for now ending a chapter in the city's history. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Placing bets,
Fashion and above all a good time. Today's Boxing Day races had it all. Both ladies and gentlemen putting in plenty of time and effort into their appearance, even after a big Christmas day.
Why did you choose this suit?
It's beautiful, it's lovely. Everyone can find me if they lose me. It's like an emergency beacon.
Oh, I can't say I was like 100%, but I've risen to the challenge. So yeah, all good.
An impressive turnout kept organisers busy.
It is a chance to have a little flutter, a wee flutter I'm sure, but as you can probably hear with the background music, there'll be plenty here just for a good time with their friends and a little bit of dancing in the middle of it all. So they're here for the racing, they're here to watch the horses, but I'm sure it's one big party for them.
The 7-race program had most glued to the track's sideline, but there was plenty of time for refreshments. While some focused on their moves, others preferred to ride solo.
Whether it was for the races or just an excuse to dress up, thousands turned out to the Newcastle Jockey Club to have some fun. I'm a little bit interested in the horses, but it's more about your friends, I think. And will you come back next year?
Absolutely. If it's weather like this. Beautiful Newcastle. Everyone loves it.
Madeline Lewis, NBN News.
Confidence is high for the trip south after a first-up win.
Look, we're not going to Melbourne Victory with any fear. We're going there to win a game of football.
The Jets take on Melbourne Victory tomorrow, and Phil Stubbins believes everyone's on the same page after a slow start to the season.
A genuine feeling of, combatively we're out there together. And it's a great point that you brought up there, Michael, that we've actually gone through some trying times, and I left the training track there saying to Clayton that was a good session. They're on board, the group's very united now.
Well, the Newcastle Jets head into tomorrow's clash fresh off the back of their first win of the season, and the one thing they won't want to replicate is their last game against the Victory, where they threw away a 2-goal lead.
But we weren't able to bring it home. I think this time we're in a much better place mentally, and the group's in a good place.
With 3 games scheduled in the next 7 days, it looks like David Carney could be rested.
Dave's played just about every minute of every game, and we've got our eye on those 3 games, as I said. And he'll be one that, we'll look to possibly rotate over the course of this coming week and keep him as fresh as we possibly can.
After sustaining a calf injury against the Reds, Edson Montano has been cleared to play in Melbourne, while the Victory will be without midfielder Mark Milligan.
I think without Milligan, he's certainly a loss. He brings real leadership to the table for the team, but they've also got some wonderful players that can fill in there.
Michael Kane, NBN News. After only getting his first taste of competing earlier this year, Josh Sinclair conquered the world.
I didn't expect to get anywhere that I've gotten. Honestly, it's a dream come true.
Last month, the Edgeworth man competed at the Olympias. Not only did he take out the Mr. Physique category in the novice division, he backed it up on the same day in the open field.
Honestly, it was pretty daunting, but when you get there, you think backstage everyone's going to be your enemy or something like that, but it's not. It's really a brotherhood over there behind the scenes.
The win came off the back of an Australian title in June. He's now working towards another big step in his development.
After my 2 victories at the Olympia, that qualified me to become a pro. So I plan to make my pro debut next year in Dubai at the World Championships. I didn't think I'd make it this far this year, so what's possible next year?
And he's using the Christmas break to work on his flaws.
Mine seems to be upper chest and arms. So I've been hitting those pretty hard over the Christmas break, and I intend to bring those up to a different level next year.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
It's a full house at Peter Puller's place. As well as looking after his own furry companion, Peter is a foster carer for Dog Rescue Newcastle.
Very, very satisfying when you work with a dog for a number of months, help to find that new family for it, and then to see it go to a wonderful, what we call a forever home.
And while the Glendale local loves caring for man's best friend, he knows he can't do it alone.
There's a lot of dogs that are given as presents for Christmas. There's a lot of people who are going away and all of a sudden think, I've got this dog, I've got to look after it, I don't want it anymore.
Since Christmas Eve, 4 dogs have been surrendered to the initiative, and carers are expecting even more over the coming weeks.
So we're probably expecting about a 25% increase on the amount of dogs that we normally would be looking after and finding foster homes for.
The volunteer-run group has around 300 foster carers scattered from the Central Coast to the Mid-North Coast. In just the last 5 years, Dog Rescue Newcastle has saved the lives of some 5,000 animals, from tiny puppies to more mature dogs like Chloe. So there's always the need for more people looking to open their homes.
The more foster carers we have, the more dogs we can save.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
They came in their thousands. By mid-morning it was mayhem, both inside and out, with shoppers keen to snap up a sale. Retailers offering 40, 50 and even up to 70% off items in what's the biggest sale day of the year in the Hunter.
50% off everything, I'm loving it.
Some were more keen than others to hit the shops early.
And what time did you get here?
7:15.
The early ride's paying off, with these ladies bagging bargains by the trolley load.
So we just got like Bond stuff for upcoming babies and stuff, all at 50% off, so definitely worth it.
Whether it was clothing, homewares or entertainment goods, most found what they were looking for.
We're the largest shopping destination in the region. We have upwards of 280 stores. The lion's share of those stores are on sale today.
Rebel Sport experienced an early surge of customers, keeping its staff on their toes.
We opened at 8 this morning. There was probably 50, 60 people lined up out the front end ready to go. So it's a big day, big day.
Hunter residents may have had to wait an extra day, but that hasn't stopped them turning out in huge numbers to grab a post-Christmas bargain.
Around 75,000 people walked through the doors at Charlestown Square, while nearby Westfield Katara also attracted a large crowd.
This year seems to be the busiest year in about 4 or 5 years, which is really, really strong.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
It was the moment Newcastle changed forever. The earthquake brought a city to its knees. The unspeakable devastation beamed around the world. "13 people lost their lives, buried beneath the rubble. And as Newcastle mourned in the days that followed, behind the scenes, the attention turned to the city's fractured facade.
One of the critical things was just assessing the damage and the level of safety of various buildings to know whether or not people could stay in them or whether they had to leave.
Among the decimation, icons of the city skyline. In total, 5,000 buildings were damaged, including 35,000 homes. The cost of Australia's most destructive earthquake, a staggering $4 billion. One of the worst hit was the Newcastle Workers' Club. 9 people were killed when the Western Wall came crashing down.
Well, it's a bit unbelievable because we sort of lost 2 stories that disappeared on this side, whereas the rest of the building seemed to be okay.
Newcastle University Professor Robert Melchers led the independent investigation into what caused the collapse. He says eyewitness accounts from 2 crane operators proved the key to unravelling the mystery.
And they explained that it sort of collapsed like a bookshelf, like this. And that was actually a very important observation because it then started to make us look at this side of the wall and what was actually different about this side of the building to the rest of it.
Uncovered in the technical findings, a lack of reinforcement in one of the main structural pillars.
During the earthquake, that got extra high loads on it. The columns all collapsed one after another.
In 1990, the Institute of Engineers Australia released a study into how the city's buildings performed during the earthquake and why so many of them failed. Professor Adrian Page was part of that study. His team investigated the city's masonry structures, finding poor maintenance and design were major contributors.
Things didn't exist that were supposed to be there to actually hold the building together.
Was the catalyst for change, prompting a review of Australia's earthquake code.
It was a wake-up call for the country in some ways, because there was an existing earthquake code, a design code for buildings prior to 1989, but in that code Newcastle was deemed to have zero risk.
25 years on and the city has rebuilt, hopefully for the better.
And now you could be pretty sure that all the buildings that have been designed since have got much, much better resistance for earthquake loading.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
Securing another season playing golf in Asia was a relief to Jake Higginbottom.
Nice to have my cardigan and play a few more bigger events, I guess.
Heading into the season-ending Dubai Open and needing to move up 5 places on the order of merit to retain his playing card for 2015, the 21-year-old did enough, firing a final round 8 under 64.
I knew I had to probably shoot 7 or 8, so I just went out there and I started holing a few putts. I played well all week, I just couldn't really hole any putts, but it sort of all fell on the last day, which was nice.
The 2012 New Zealand Open winner had an up-and-down year. Coming runner-up at the $1 million Fiji International was the highlight.
I hadn't been playing very well at all, and I come into some form, and I guess I had a real chance of winning there. So, but it was, that was definitely the best week this year.
Next year, he'll again try his luck on making the Web.com tour in the US, but admits there's still parts of his game that needs work.
You always want to improve, so I don't think it's not so much technique, maybe as much anymore. Like there's always little things you need to fix, but it's more just trying to get everything more well-rounded so everything's sort of firing at the right time.
Michael Kane, NBN News. All eyes were on the hot favourite Jason Doyle in the semi-final, but it was a Newcastle rider keen to set the pace. Doyle looked to force the issue up on the inside, but a costly turn threatened his chances. Current Australian under-21 Speedway champion Max Frick then made his move, while Sydney's Joey Ringwood went all out to grab a finals berth. But it was Masters that finished the race the way he started. A quality field for the final saw Masters then pitted against Cowra's Brady Kurtz, Bud-Eye's Jai Etheridge and fellow Curry rider Rowan Tungate. Kurtz briefly took the lead on the second lap, but it was Tungate's race heading into the final lap, holding on to win the Jason Crump Cup for 2014. Tungate will now travel to Gillman Speedway for tomorrow's South Australian Championships. Michael Kane, NBN News.
A city shaken to its core. On December 28, 1989, an earthquake struck Newcastle. 25 years on, and the memories of that tragic event are never far away.
After 25 years, it's extraordinary how much raw feeling there is still in the community.
Today, a special anniversary service was held at Christchurch Cathedral. A candle was lit for each of the 13 victims, and their names were read out loud, gone but never forgotten. Wreaths were also laid. While prayers were said for the thousands of men and women who helped rebuild a city shattered by grief.
This was in many ways Newcastle's finest hour. People who were rescuers, people who reconstructed the city.
Former Lord Mayor John McNaughton was among the crowd. He says, looking back, the terrible events of that day actually brought the community together.
Daunting, I suppose, is the word. We had no idea what to do or how to do it. Newcastle was always very strong, and it became stronger still.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
And the first thing I do remember that did come down was the back wall.
I think this play has really brought the community together, and so it's wonderful to be able to bring it back 25 years later.
Back in early November, a blaze believed to have been sparked by a lightning strike threatened 60 homes at Curry. It's that combination of storms and heat that's foremost on firefighters' minds this summer.
We've been very lucky and very well coordinated with the national parks and other surrounding RFS districts, where we've been able to get crews on the ground very quickly and deal with these before they become big fires.
While current conditions are allowing bushland to grow, more hazard reduction burns are being planned. Warm weather and strong winds are expected to set in throughout January and February.
We prioritise our burning based upon the infrastructure that's around and the population in that area. So we will look at where we can protect the greatest amount of people.
The RFS says residents should take this time to prepare their homes for the return of hotter conditions.
While we're getting more rainfall, it's evaporating just as quick. Having said that, it is lovely and cool, and that is not generally associated with Christmas time.
Madeline Lewis, NBN News.
Brought on by a drought in February this year, Marundai suffered a severe blue-green algae outbreak. Trucks had to cart water from Scone to Marundai. Bottled water was brought in for drinking and emergency capital works had to be completed, all at a large cost to council, $750,000.
We had to access water from additional sources. In the Pages River, for example, we had to put in various pieces of capital works and pipelines and so forth to be able to make sure that our current systems could work as best they possibly can.
Now, though, there's some good news for ratepayers, with the state government announcing it'll chip in almost $250,000.
This announcement is terrific news for council, and we're very pleased that we've actually got this money coming through.
But council says there's only one outcome to ensure the algae situation never happens again. A $20 million pipeline from Glenbourne Dam to Marundai needs to be built.
While you've got open dams in the environment that we have, and while the sun and the air gets to that open dam, and that is your town water supply, you are always going to run the risk of algae problems and having a problem with town water supplies.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
The game was barely 2 minutes old when Adrian Madashi introduced himself to Victory star Besart Berisha. Melbourne was in control, but the Jets' defence was proving tough to break down. When Scott Neville was booked late in the half, the Jets had 2 yellow cards and no shots on goal. Andrew Houle's free kick seemed to sum up the first 45. The Victory then picked up where it left off. One Melbourne man was causing plenty of headaches. But Newcastle held on. Midway through the half, Ben Kantarovski had the chance to help put Newcastle in front. The Jets looked to be gathering momentum, but seconds later Berisha was fouled by James Virgili.
He's rode the opportunity and they've got the free kick, and yeah, well look, for me that's not a foul, witnessing that, but look, that's the way it goes, mate.
The free kick proved a worthy winner.
You know, there's some decisions that have killed us to this point, and I think that, you know, if the referees were to see that again, they might make a different decision.
In stoppage time, Neville almost earned a precious point.
To limit them to the way we did was good, but we've got to be a bit more positive as well when we get on the ball.
Post-match, Phil Stubbins confirmed Newcastle will be active in the January transfer window.
Can we enhance our group with maybe 1 or 2 quality players? We'll wait and see what happens with that, but certainly we'll be looking, yeah.
None of the locals expect us to be back because no one comes back here to clean up. It's too remote, it's too harsh, and it's too difficult. And you know, I'm really proud that we've done what we said and we've come back and cleaned it up.
Two years ago, the property market in Muswellbrook couldn't keep up with demand. The mining industry was booming and so too was the population. It was a rental market so competitive, some families couldn't find a roof to put over their heads. Today, the situation couldn't be more different.
It was hard to accept after you're chasing around trying to get everyone accommodated, and then suddenly it just goes the other way.
Agent Kevin Timpson currently has about 50 rental properties vacant, which on recent numbers is an improvement.
We reached up to about 90. At the stage we were 90, I believe there was a total vacancy of about 350 in Muswellbrook.
Rental prices are down by a third and the number of sales has dropped by about 70%.
If I revert back to the local people, they're not sure about whether they're going to have a job, so they've also pulled out of the scene for the time being.
Fellow real estate agent Tony McTaggart is battling a similar problem, but he also sees it as a time of opportunity for buyers.
I suppose in some ways an opportunity for people to afford some good housing at the moment, and that's the way I see it as a local person in the town.
A view echoed by the Chamber of Commerce.
We've been through cycles before, not quite like this one, but we have been through cycles before where employment has dropped off and investment has dropped off. But the longer term, and in fact even the medium term, is looking still quite promising.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
2014 has been one of the driest years on record, but according to Hunter Water, the dams haven't suffered too much. Levels are averaging about 77% in its 4 storage points.
This year, at this time of year, is the driest that we've been in terms of dam levels for over 10 years. So it's been a very, very dry 12 months and it's going to be a very dry summer, unfortunately.
Grahamstown Dam, the Hunter's largest drinking water supply, provides about 40% of the region's requirements. This time last year it sat at 95%, but in 2014 it's dropped to around 77%.
It's to do with the design of the dams. The dam is incredibly wide and very shallow, which means we lose a lot of water in evaporation. The good news is that when it rains heavily, it fills up really quickly.
Chichester Dam storage is about the same as it was this time last year, but did drop to just 45% in August. Water restrictions aren't in place, but WaterWise rules limiting when and where we can use hoses and sprinklers are.
And that has saved about 1 billion litres of drinking water. And just a few weeks ago, we opened up the Kooragang Recycled Water Plant, which will, over the next 12 months, save about 3 billion litres of drinking water. So a number of key initiatives have been introduced.
Madeline Lewis, NBN News.
Just a day after arriving home from the last gasp loss to Melbourne Victory, the Jets were back at training preparing for a clash with the other team from the Victorian capital. Having waited almost an hour to produce a shot on Saturday night, Phil Stubbins is determined to see his side get on the front foot early against City.
We need to create most chances, and I think against Adelaide we created 7 shots on target. We scored 2 goals, 2 very good goals, and we'll be looking to emulate, those achievements.
The coach originally suggested he'd stick with the side that started against Adelaide, but later admitted he'll make changes in attack.
The boys at the back will play, as well as Zen and Ben Kantarovsky, and then you'll have to wait and see.
Stubbins did confirm that David Carney will move from the bench into the first 11. But it seems there's no room for Taylor Regan, who returns from injury, or skipper Kuya Lins, who makes his comeback from a 2-game suspension. Ben Kennedy missed today's session to attend to a family matter, but he'll start in goals tomorrow, with Adrian Madashi to play in front of him.
He's a very good communicator. He's somebody that's certainly very experienced, and his input over the course of the last 2 games has been very good, and we haven't had any cramp. So it's a positive sign for us and for Adrian.
The coach is hoping a more positive style of play encourages more fans to pack into Hunter Stadium tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.
We need to start providing them with, a higher energy game and making them applaud us off the pitch like they did against Adelaide after the first half.
Any sort of temptation to make some changes given that it's been such a quick time?
Success has always eluded Hunter trainers in the Intercity Pace Final, and in its 52nd year, the odds are still stacked against them. Bob's Farm's Jeffrey Harding will be the region's best hope, with his runner Strathloughlin Andy. Harding's son Matthew will be on board again for the final.
He gets a bit of luck in the final. I think he'll run home pretty well. He's not usually driven to the front. He was a bit lazy and switched off a bit, but he'll improve on that.
Continuing the family theme, the early favourite is likely to be All Eyes on Us, trained by Belinda McCarthy and driven by husband Luke. The 3-year-old held out better than Max in Heat 3, trained by Madowie's Darren Ray. Last year's long shot winner Megs Ferrari has also qualified for Saturday's final.
For Tegan Martin, this year has been a game changer. Crowned Miss Universe Australia in June, the 22-year-old is now packing her life into 4 suitcases for 3 weeks in Miami, Florida. There, she'll try to secure one of the biggest titles in the beauty world, Miss Universe.
It is going to be a tough 3 weeks, lots of rehearsals, lots of interviews, lots of shows, hopefully a few Miami swimwear shows, that will be exciting. Yeah, not much sleep and lots of work.
Tegan will wear a Dreamtime-inspired number for the national costume section, as voted by the Australian public. It's the part of the night she's most looking forward to.
The colours and the big sun on my back, I think it's going to be, as I said, up there with the rest of them. A lot of the time we've been quite conservative, so I'm happy that we're really stepping it up.
The January 25 pageant will see nearly 90 contestants narrowed to 5 before a winner is crowned. The Aussie beauty is aiming for a top 10 finish.
I'd be so ecstatic with that. That would give me enough exposure to, to represent Australia and show everyone that Australia's done really well. But I'm just so proud of myself to have made it this far, and anything from now is just a bonus, really.
Madeline Lewis, NBN News.